Think the future of car design started with Tesla or McLaren? Think again. Back in the 1960s, a handful of visionary machines were already light years ahead. Sport coupes so radical, they made Detroit steel look prehistoric. Hand-shaped fins, bubble roofs, asymmetry, turbine tech, these weren't just cars. They were time machines. And today they're rare, forgotten, and jaw-dropping proof that 2060 arrived half a century early. The 1960s were the golden age of horsepower. But hidden in the shadows of Mustangs and GTOs were machines so futuristic they looked like they rolled off a spaceship. In this episode of Rare Ride Legend, we uncover 8 of the rarest, most forward-thinking sport coupes ever built. Concepts and production cars that defied logic, ignored trends, and paved the way for tomorrow's supercars. These aren't your average classics. These are the coupes that made jaws drop then and still do now. Buckle up, some of these beasts were built in secret, raced in silence, and disappeared before the world caught up. Top 1. 1960 Plymouth XNR Concept. What if the jet age didn't just inspire design, but hijacked it completely? In 1960, the Plymouth XNR emerged like a spacecraft crash-landed into Detroit. It wasn't symmetrical, it wasn't practical, it looked like it came from a 2060 alternate timeline, built not for roads, but for runways. The XNR was born from the eccentric genius of Virgil Exner, Chrysler's design boss, known for pushing boundaries. Wanting to shatter conventional car design, he commissioned Italian coach builder Ghia to bring his asymmetrical fever dream to life. The result? A long-nosed, driver-focused coupe with a towering single rear fin, offset hood bulge, and cockpit pod that mimicked a single-seat fighter jet. Built on a Valiant chassis, the body was hammered from hand-formed steel. The driver sat low in a wraparound windscreen behind a dashboard lined with aircraft-style gauges and toggle switches. The right side of the car was deliberately lower, sleeker, almost vanishing compared to the finned aggression of the left. No part of the XNR looked mirrored. And that was the point. This wasn't a powerless showpiece. Exner equipped it with a Hyperpack 170 CI slant-6 engine pushing 250 horsepower, mated to a 3-speed manual, with a top speed over 140 miles per hour and 0 to 60 in 7.5 seconds. It could outpace most European GTs of its day. But Chrysler killed production after just one unit, deeming it too radical. That one prototype toured global auto shows before being sold off, eventually landing in Lebanon. It survived war, neglect, and time, rediscovered decades later and restored to Concours condition. In 2012, it sold at auction for nearly $1 million and is now revered as one of the most avant-garde American concept cars ever built. But while the XNR was built under corporate badges, the next spaceship on wheels came from a lone California visionary, fusing hot rod rebellion with alien geometry no automaker would dare approve. Top 2, 1963, Mantaray by Dean Jeffries. Before concept cars came with wind tunnels and CAD software, Dean Jeffries built one in his garage that looked like it hovered. The 1963 Mantaray wasn't built for dealers or race teams. It was built for fantasy, and it looked like it had escaped from 2060 and landed on a California drag strip. The Mantaray's skeleton came from a 1959 Maserati Formula One chassis. Yes, a literal race car foundation. From there, Jeffries sculpted a one-of-a-kind fiberglass and aluminum body by hand. The design was part spaceship, part sea creature. Wheel covers that looked like fins, a sweeping central spine, gill-style side vents, and a glass bubble canopy that lifted like a jet fighter's. Inside, it was more spaceship than car. Snow-white sculpted seats, chrome trim, and floating instrumentation gave the cockpit a retro-futuristic vibe. Everything from the curvature of the rear haunches to the teardrop tail looked organic, fluid, and wild. This was no static display. It was fully operational. Under the hood sat a massive 406 cubic inch Ford FE V8, producing nearly 400 horsepower, paired with a 4-speed transmission and functioning suspension. Jeffries wasn't playing pretend. The Mantaray could drive, and fast. Its first public appearance at the 1964 Oakland Roadster show stunned audiences and judges alike, earning the coveted Riddler Award. Then came Hollywood. The car was featured in Bikini Beach, driven by Frankie Avalon, cementing its place in pop culture. It wasn't just a car, It became a symbol of what the custom car world could become when unchained from reality. Today, the Mantaray is a museum piece, restored and revered. It remains one of the greatest one-off custom creations ever built in America. No wind tunnel, no boardroom, just talent, vision, and nerve. But while the Mantaray floated like a sci-fi sculpture, the next coupe ditched elegance for nuclear aggression, mixing turbine smoothness with alien proportions in one of the wildest handcrafted concept machines ever shown. Top 3, 1965, Gene Winfield Reactor. What if one car from 1965 predicted electric steering, aluminum bodies, adjustable ride height, and front-wheel drive, all in one futuristic shell? The Gene Winfield Reactor wasn't just ahead of its time, it made 2060 look lazy. It was a concept car not from Detroit, but from another dimension entirely. Commissioned by Ben Delphia and brought to life by custom legend Gene Winfield, the Reactor, originally dubbed the Autorama Special, was a Frankenstein of brilliance. It rode on a Citroën DS chassis, giving it hydropneumatic suspension with adjustable ride height. The driver could lower or raise the entire car with a lever, a feature still considered advanced today. Its hand-formed aluminum body was lightweight, wind-cheating, and menacing. A wide, ventless nose tapered into deep-set wheel wells. Hidden headlights flanked the front. The rear flowed into a wraparound glass dome, and gullwing doors revealed a cockpit straight out of 2001: A Space Odyssey. Inside, white leather, sculpted panels, brushed aluminum, and toggle switches everywhere. Unlike most customs, this one didn't pack a V8. Instead, it ran a Turbo Air 6 Flat 6 from a Corvair, mounted low and up front, powering the front wheels via Citroën's advanced transaxle. It didn't scream horsepower, only about 180 horsepower, but it handled like a go-kart with a jet-powered shell. So impressive, it starred on Star Trek, driven by Mr. Spock himself. The Reactor won awards, stole the spotlight at Autorama, and later appeared on Batman and Bewitched. It influenced concept designs well into the 70s, foreshadowing everything from wedge shapes to adjustable suspension systems. Today, it lives restored, still outclassing most futuristic cars of the modern era. But while the Reactor whispered with science fiction elegance, the next V8 masterpiece howled with natural aspiration, handcrafted in Italy, dripping with elegance and brutal enough to make supercars nervous half a century later. Top 4, 1962 Ferrari 250 GTO. What if the most valuable car in the world was also one of the most futuristic-looking coupes ever sculpted in metal? The 1962 Ferrari 250 GTO wasn't just built to race. It looked like it could bend light. Even at rest, it looked fast enough to time travel through decades of design trend. The GTO was born out of necessity, Ferrari's answer to new GT racing regulations. Gito Bizzarini led the initial development, shaping it in a wind tunnel, before Mauro Forghieri and Scaglietti finalized the bodywork. The result? A long, low, sensual form with sculpted fenders, triple hood vents, cam-style tail, and that iconic twin-nostril nose. Beneath the alloy body lay a 3-light Colombo V12, generating 300 horsepower at a screaming 7,400 RPM linked to a 5-speed manual. It rode on independent front suspension and a rear live axle with a Watts linkage, delivering both predictability and bite. The car weighed under 2,000 pounds, making it agile, aggressive, and near perfectly balanced. The cockpit was pure function. Bare aluminum floors, leather buckets, Smith's gauges, and a wooden steering wheel as thin as a violin bow. No radio, no padding, just purpose. Only 36 units were ever built between 1962-64, each slightly different depending on purpose and driver. But these weren't trailer queens, they were apex predators. The 250 GTO dominated tracks: Tour de France, Targa Florio, Sebring, Le Mans. Wherever it showed up, it won. 0 to 60 in 5.4 seconds, top speed north of 170 miles per hour, numbers that shamed many 1990 supercars. In modern times, its rarity and beauty have driven prices sky high. One private sale reached $70 million, making it the most expensive car ever sold. But while the GTO embodied Maranello's thunder, the next coupe whispered Kyoto's elegance. Sculpted in Japan, driven by precision, and cloaked in lines that looked like liquid metal from the year 2067. Top 5, 1967 Toyota 2000 GT. Before the Skyline, before the Supra, there was this. In 1967, Toyota shocked the world with a coupe so refined, so futuristic, it looked like it belonged in a museum of modern art or orbit. The 2000 GT wasn't just Japan's first supercar, it was a design prophecy, an arrow shot into the heart of European dominance. Developed in partnership with Yamaha, the 2000 GT was Toyota's declaration of intent. It stood just 45 inches tall, with a swooping silhouette that fused Eastern minimalism with Western aggression. The front end featured pop-up headlights and oval intakes, while the rear tapered smoothly into a wide glass hatch. Even standing still, it looked like it moved at 200 miles per hour. Power came from a 2-light DOHC inline-6, modified by Yamaha to deliver 150 horsepower. It revved smoothly to 7,000 RPM and was mated to a slick-shifting 5-speed manual. Underneath, it had fully independent suspension and 4-wheel disc brakes, tech normally reserved for Ferraris and Porsches of the era. The interior? A handcrafted cabin with rosewood veneer, sculpted leather buckets, and full Smith's gauges. Toggle switches lined the dash, echoing aircraft design. It was refined, exotic, and utterly unlike anything else in Toyota's lineup, or anywhere in Japan. Only 351 units were ever built between 1967 and 1970. 2 special convertibles were made for You Only Live Twice, where Sean Connery's Bond drove one across Japanese landscapes. Suddenly the whole world knew Japan could do more than copy, it could lead. 0 to 60 miles per hour in 8.4 seconds, 135 miles per hour top speed. Not earth-shattering, but the aesthetics were. Today, collectors pay over $1 million for original examples, especially in left-hand drive. It's now seen as the spiritual grandfather of the modern Japanese performance movement. But while the 2000 GT glided like silk on rice paper, the next coupe carved through Autobahn air, armed with Bavarian steel and sharp fin grace that made even Italian designers nod in respect. Top 6, 1963 BMW 3200 CS. Before BMWs became corporate and conservative, there was the 3200 CS, a coupe so elegant, so futuristic, it practically invented the BMW silhouette. Long hood, Hofmeister kink, pillarless grace, and a shark's grin that whispered of Autobahn royalty. It wasn't just a car, it was a blueprint for everything that followed. Pensed by Giorgetto Giugiaro at Bertone, the 3200 CS was BMW's first true grand touring coupe. Every inch was deliberate. A forward-thrusting stance, clean side profile, thin roof pillars, and frameless doors. Most notably, it introduced the now iconic Hofmeister kink, the forward curve at the rear of the side glass that would become BMW's signature for decades. Under the hood, a 3.2 lights OHV V8, inherited from the BMW 5.7, delivering 160 horsepower through a 4-speed manual. With a top speed of 125 miles per hour and a 0 to 60 sprint of around 9 seconds, it wasn't brutal, but it was composed, smooth, and endlessly refined. It made speed feel inevitable rather than aggressive. Inside, it was German luxury at its peak. Wood veneer, sculpted leather seats, and an elegantly simple dash made the cabin feel timeless. The driver sat low, with the horizon perfectly framed through the curved windshield. Despite its poise and pedigree, only 603 examples were ever built between 1962-65. It never saw mass success, but its DNA quietly threaded through every great BMW coupe that followed, from the E9 CSL to the 6 Series. It wasn't loud, but it was influential. Today, surviving 3200 CS coupes are prized for their rarity and design significance. Values range between $250,000 to $350,000, but few owners let them go. It's not just a collectible, it's a museum-worthy turning point in BMW history, rolling on 4 wheels. But while Bavaria carved elegance from aluminum, the next coupe mixed American jet-age drama with European flair. Wearing tail fins, turbine edges, and ambition big enough to take on both sides of the Atlantic. Top 7, 1962 Studebaker Gran Turismo Hawk. Studebaker wasn't supposed to beat Detroit at style, but in 1962, the Gran Turismo Hawk arrived with jet-age drama, European restraint, and proportions so far ahead of their time, people assumed it came from Italy. Instead, it came from South Bend, Indiana, and it looked like a spaceship designed for Route 66. With the company on financial life support, Studebaker turned to industrial designer Brooks Stevens to breathe new life into its aging Hawk lineup. Working with a shoestring budget, Stevens performed a masterclass in restyling. He gave the old coupe a squared-off roofline, clean rear fascia, aggressive grille, and sharp beltline, ditching the 1950 excess in favor of 1960 confidence. Power came from a 4.7 lights 289 CI-V8, rated at up to 240 horsepower, mated to either a 3-speed manual or Borg-Warner automatic. Some versions even offered twin-traction rear ends and front disc brakes, features unheard of in its price range. On paper, it matched or beat contemporary T-Birds and Galaxies. Inside, the GT Hawk featured a padded dash, bucket seats, console shifter, and round jet-inspired gauges. It offered both sport and civility, wrapped in a cockpit that felt like an airline's first class, minus the pretension. Despite its brilliance, Studebaker was on borrowed time. Only 9,335 units were sold in 1962. Dealers struggled to move them. Marketing was minimal. The GT Hawk never got a second chance, and muscle cars arrived just months later to steal the spotlight. The car could do 0 to 60 in 9 seconds and had a top speed near 125 miles per hour. More than that, it left behind a design legacy admired today by collectors and stylists alike. Prices now hover between $40,000 and $60,000, with sharp examples quickly climbing. But while Studebaker's swan song whispered elegance, the final coupe in our lineup screamed chrome-clad confidence, an American icon reborn as a low-slung sports cruiser with curves sharper than ever before. Top 8 1961 Ford Thunderbird Sports Roadster. Some cars whisper luxury. This one screamed. The 1961 Ford Thunderbird Sports Roadster wasn't just a personal luxury coupe, it was a full-on design statement with afterburner taillights, bullet-shaped bodywork, and a fiberglass tonneau that turned it into a 2-seat dream machine. If Gotham City had traffic laws, Batman might have driven this. The third-generation Thunderbird debuted in 1961 with sleeker proportions and jet-age detailing, but the rare sports roadster variant took it to another level. Introduced in 1962, it featured a unique fiberglass tonneau that covered the rear seats, transforming it into a sculpted 2-seater unlike anything else on the road. Designers extended the tail fins, sharpened the quarter panels, and added chrome rocket exhaust-inspired taillights. Kelsey Hayes wire wheels added sparkle, and every inch of its 205-inch body screamed movement, even when parked. It was a personal luxury coupe wrapped in the skin of a sci-fi fantasy. Under the hood sat a 390 cubic inch FEV8, rated at 300 horsepower, mated to Ford's Cruise-O-Matic 3-speed automatic transmission. It wasn't just show. It could hit 0 to 60 in 8.8 seconds with torque to spare. Despite its size, it cruised with authority. Only 1,427 sports roadsters were produced in 1962, and fewer remain intact today. The fiberglass tonneau was fragile and often removed. Many were converted back to standard 4-seaters over time, but for collectors, a true surviving sports roadster, complete with factory wheels and trim, is the holy grail of early 60s Ford design. With values now between $100,000 and $150,000, the sports roadster is among the most valuable non-Shelby Fords of its era. It captured a moment when Detroit dared to think like aircraft engineers and built a boulevard cruiser with the soul of a show car. It may close our list, but the Thunderbird Sports Roadster proved one thing. The 1960s weren't just about horsepower, they were about vision. And few cars dared to look as boldly into the future as this low-finned, high-drama icon. Which of these futuristic relics blew your mind the most? Drop your pick in the comments, and don't forget to hit like if these space-age icons deserve a comeback. At Rare Ride Legend, we dig up the forgotten chapters of car history, machines that were too wild, too rare, or too advanced for their time. Subscribe if you crave more offbeat legends, million-dollar anomalies, and design experiments that push the edge of possibility, because sometimes the future wasn't built tomorrow, it was built in 1963, and it's waiting in a museum, a barn, or maybe your neighbor's garage.